Oh, I'm on. Okay. Good evening, everyone. It is May 9th at 5:33 p.m., and I'm calling the meeting of the Local Comprehensive Planning Committee together. And I want to just let everyone know that the meeting will be televised live via Xfinity Channel 8 or High Definition Channel 1072. It may also be accessed via the Government Access Channel live stream on the Town of Barnstable's website. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, the committee must inquire whether anyone is taping this meeting and to please make their presence known. I see no tapers, so thank you very much. Okay, first I'd like to call for approval of the minutes of the meeting of March 28th.
So moved.
I'll second that.
It's moved in second. Any comments, corrections, omissions? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ayes have it. Thank you. You're welcome. So we are going into public comment now. I think we have someone amongst our ranks that would like to give some public comments. I'm going to ask anyone from the dais here that if you want to do that, to go ahead and take the lectern and turn the mic on. And if anyone else in the audience wants to do public comment, this would be the time. We're going to set a limit. Do we need a? There's not that many people. Thank you, Megan.
Should I sign in? So I'm making public comment as a member of the public. And I'm going to read something I actually wrote out, which I'm not great at, so please bear with me.
Why don't you introduce yourself for the record?
So Megan Mort, resident of Marston's Mills. So there's a few things I would like to address publicly as a resident and somebody who has experienced housing insecurity my whole life. Recently, myself and a few others have been accused of members of the public of being paid actors for Housing Assistance Corporation. LCPC members have also been accused of losing our minds, that's a direct quote, at town council public comment. I'd have to look back at video for reference, but I don't recall seeing anyone sitting before me that has ever lost their mind at public comment at any meeting I've ever been a part of. This is my first experience with something of this nature, requiring this level of dedication to my community. I know many of those in front of me have much more experience than I in a number of ways with responsibilities like this. I've learned a lot from every member on this LCPC, and I take that with me in every experience I have. I've seen all of us come together to create something that we can all be proud of with very little conflict having gotten in the way, despite any disagreement we all may have had. It has been a truly collaborative experience, and for that, I thank all of you. So it upsets me when someone spreads blatant lies about our members and our work together. A big part of me is absolutely tickled that I'm occupying this much space in someone else's head rent-free, but that's just the petty side of me. An ironic phrase given the subject, but another part of me is furious that this person is attempting to undermine my own story and life experiences for their we're-full, anti-housing, anti-growth, and to me, anti-working class agenda. A big part of my participation on the LCPC is because of my lived experience, my near constant interaction with the housing world and all of the struggles within it. That's the driving force of my application to the LCPC, my interview for this committee, and my perspective as we work through this. I have been working since I was 14, not to save, not to purchase one special big-ticket item, not for college, to survive. By 15, I was homeless, a couch-surfing teen due to a home life that was no longer safe for me. I worked to pay gas money for rides, to pay something for the space I was occupying on couches, to pay for food. This was right around 2000. Cell phones weren't very common yet. Landlines were in every home. I needed a roof, the ability to make and receive phone calls for rides and work. I worked after school at Buffy's Pizza, then Burger King, then the mall, various stores, the usual mall circuit. Gas stations, restaurant, front and back of the house cleaning, driving a taxi at one point. I've lived in Marston's Mills, Centerville, South Yarmouth, Falmouth, Wellfleet, Mashpee, Sandwich, Hyannis, Wareham, possibly another town I may have forgotten. No matter how much you pay or how hard you try to make yourself inconspicuous, after a few months you start feeling like an unwelcome presence in someone else's home. My senior year, I had to go to night school because things were getting more expensive and I finally had a cell phone to pay for. Prepaid, of course. Because of that, I had to give up marching band, which I'd been a part of since 4th grade. That was actually crushing. I still love seeing the Barnstable High School marching band when they actually have members, and we were 120 strong and champions, and I am very proud of that. I was in and out of toxic relationships with people who would leave me stranded with no ride home, regardless of the plans that were made or the distance I would have to travel from home to school or work. I couldn't get my driver's license until I was 18 after I graduated, as I couldn't afford driver's ed. I slept on Main Street for a short period of time. Fortunately, it was late summer and not cold yet. By this point, I had survived rape and other sexual assaults. I learned about Hyannis family planning, about birth control and emergency contraception, abortion access, and STI testing. All right around my high school graduation year. I've been a patient of Hyannis family planning ever since, and I would highly recommend them. Sprinkled through all of these experiences are years of alcohol, drugs, predatory men, and overarching all of that is the inability to save, to continue my education, to learn about things like finances, credit, college loans. To be fair, FICO didn't meaningfully exist until 1989, but I certainly wouldn't know that until well after the fact. Fast forward to 2005, and I got my CNA license from Cape Cod Community College thanks to a grant program that was available and funded the course. Otherwise, I would not have been able to afford it. At this point, I'm still overpaying for rent in attic and basement apartments, rooms in shared houses, on couches, still uncertain about how safe my housing is or how long it would last. Still having a hard time with alcohol and transportation to and from work in cars that may or may not start on any given day. Went from $9 an hour at a pizza place to $12 an hour at a CNA. CNAs are still grossly underpaid. Fast forward to 2012, and I graduate from the Upper Cape Tech LPN program, having been exposed to the world of nursing as a CNA. I had been living with an elderly woman and caring for her when I wasn't at school or work. I worked full-time, went to the program full-time, and cared for her at night, making sure she was safe, clean, fed, and had taken medications appropriately. I now had student loan debt that I'm still paying off, that's still affecting my credit and ability to buy a home. I essentially stopped drinking late 2011 after my first and only OUI. I went from $12 an hour to $19 an hour, at some points making triple that while travel nursing and keeping a full-time job on Cape at the same time. In 2017, we had a child who experienced life-threatening medical complications and spent nearly his first year of life in and out of Boston Children's Hospital. I was out of work for about 6 months, able to return part-time, but even then frequently had to call out due to hospitalizations for our son. We were denied food stamps based on my husband's income, $17 an hour as a cook, and desperately trying to keep our heads above water with a medically complex child who eventually underwent a liver transplant a week shy of his first birthday. At this point, living in a one-bedroom basement apartment with an absolute unicorn of a landlord, which you rarely find. Now that we had a child, we needed more than one bedroom, and it took us nearly 2 years to find something we could afford, and we found it through word of mouth. We got lucky, and we started to feel like we had some stability. Fast forward to 2020 and COVID. By this point, we had some stability. We had been in our rental home with a near absentee landlord for almost 2 years. We started the adoption process through the state, and it took a year for background checks to be completed. We were about to schedule the home property visit and then we found our home listed for sale on Facebook without ever having given notice that it was going to be for sale. This stopped the adoption process in its tracks after a year. The home was sold, and most of our belongings are in storage and remain in storage at this moment, which is yet another expense. We are living with family in an overcrowded house. We are fortunate to have a roof over our heads and a warm place to live, but most rentals remain far above what we could safely afford when you add in utilities, childcare expenses, car insurance, storage, health insurance, everything. A car that is literally falling apart around me that was more affordable to put a new engine in than buy new or used. And now as a 39-year-old woman who is still going to school, still doing all I can to increase my hourly wage, often working 60-plus hours a week with home and rental prices that have surged after COVID and are barely slowing down. Now, after everything I have been through, everything I have worked for, after years of doing housing advocacy work, volunteering my time, energy, labor, spirit, I am being accused of being a paid actor. If it weren't so insulting, it would be wholly ludicrous. I have never been paid for my housing advocacy. I have never been approached to do any of this for pay, by anything, by anybody, at any time. My residency has been questioned. I have always been a resident of Barnstable, usually Marston's Mills. I have never had a mailing address other than Marston's Mills or my P.O. box in West Hyannisport, which, as a homeless person, was pretty handy. I have maintained my childhood home as my residential address because changing my home address every few months while I'm homeless is a huge chore, and I often never know where I would land. Only recently have I changed it to the home we're in now, but I still have my P.O. box. I understand I come off as brash and unfeeling and cold and abrasive and all these other things, but truth be told, all of that is survival. I don't have the time to beat around the bushes and be nice just for the sake of being nice when we have work to do. I have never had the time or the luxury for any of that. So I just hope that the people who are watching or that who care can understand where I'm coming from and that still at almost 40 years old, I'm still in survival mode. And I made it out. There are people that were much less fortunate that went through much more than I did. So I hope we can all keep that in mind as we're discussing things publicly, making accusations about others from our safe, warm homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. I'm sure that wasn't easy. If anyone else would like to speak, would you like to go to the dais, Aisha? To the lectern, sorry. And introduce yourself.
Of course, my name is Asia Graves. I wanted to come up, I'm a member of the LCPC. I wanted to come up and echo basically the same thing Megan has already said. My life has been hard just like hers. We both have come from experiences where we have always had to worry about if we would have a roof over our head. And to wake up every morning and not know if in a month, 6 months, a year, you're going to be homeless, that's a problem. I'm just as loud and just as brash sometimes. I know it can be off-putting to people, but my mother's going to be homeless in less than a month. I don't live in a place where she could even come and live. If she decided she needed to come and live with me, my apartment complex would not allow that. So luckily, my mother was able to get services through Pine Street and in Boston, where she has resided, but she's going to be homeless in less than a month, and I'm working with people to make sure that she does have housing, thankfully, in Boston. But when we talk about these issues and we talk about our long-term strategic plan, we need to realize that there are people within our communities that actively struggle, and they join these committees, they join these boards because they know that there are people like them in this community that may not have the skills, the time, or any of that to do these meetings. So I just want to make sure that the public is aware that we're all human. We all make mistakes, we all may do different things, but I've never been paid by HAC or any of the organizations on Cape Cod to do advocacy for housing. I've been paid to do human trafficking advocacy throughout the United States because I'm a survivor. I've been on my own since 14 years old, too. I was sold into sex trafficking from the ages of 15 through 18 years old. Bought and sold around the country every day, worrying about if I'm going to get beaten, if I'm going to get raped, if I'm going to get tortured, or is my trafficker going to throw me away like a piece of trash? Those things were done. And there are people here on Cape Cod that experiences those things, but they may not be public enough to share those life experiences. My story has been featured in Katie Couric, Marie Claire, New York Times. So yes, in the past I was paid to do advocacy, but I am not working for HAC or any of these organizations on the Cape that do housing advocacy. I'm speaking from my own personal experience, knowing that if I made $1 more per hour, which would help me get out of debt, which I have over $15,000 in credit card debt, I wouldn't have a place to live on Cape Cod. I had 5 roommates before I moved to Cape Cod. I was living in a rooming house, which was not safe. People were coming in and out. And I'm a rape survivor, so I couldn't sleep. I moved to Cape Cod and thought, this community is so welcoming. My first year, it was, when I did not do public speaking. I've had my name by including members of different committees, town council and other, brash my name and tell me that I'm someone who doesn't live here. I got a letter sent to me saying, I don't believe you live where you live at. Thankfully, my town councilor, who is in this room and is so amazing, has been to my house where I live at. So no one can say I don't live where I live at. It's disheartening, and I hope that as a community, we can do better. I know that I aim to be the best person I can be every day, and everyone deserves and should have clean, safe, stable housing. No one should live in substandard housing. Doesn't matter your income. All housing should at least be clean, without roaches and rats. I lived in a situation where I had to leave all of my belongings because there were roaches and rats that got into my belongings. When you've had this experience of riding buses until the end of the line because you have nowhere to sleep, talk to me then. And I will be glad to help you out of that situation like I do every day with the general public. So just remember, public, we're here to help, not hurt.
Thank you, Asia. I think it's hard for you guys to do that, and I appreciate it. We work with a lot of abstract issues, and you can really bring it home for us and give a different point of view from what others may have. Avery, are you okay? You okay? Yeah. Okay, any other further public comment? That was a little redundant. Any other public comment at this time? Okay. So to proceed with our topics for discussion today, Kate, do you want to just give us a quick overview of the agenda?
Sure. Thank you, Wendy. Kate Maldonado, Senior Planner, Planning and Development. So this evening, we're kicking off the Economic Development chapter, and we'll talk about that for the full month of May. Really quickly, want to touch base on the village community meetings and, more importantly, the public comment period, which is open for another week for the draft chapters. Again, land use, natural resources, housing, and infrastructure. We have developed another survey question, again, as an opportunity to engage the public in this effort as we progress pertaining to infrastructure, so I'll present that. And then we'll have a presentation by Kyle Pedicini, Town Planning and Development, our Community and Economic Development Planner, who will talk about economic development, current and anticipated issues and opportunities on a local level. I will note that Paul Niedzwiecki of the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce will come before you at your next meeting scheduled for Thursday, May 30th, to talk about economic development on a broader, more regional level. And then after Kyle's presentation, we'll take a first crack at the goals and strategies for economic development, and then we'll return to those goals and strategies after Paul's presentation in case there's further insight that he provides that we want to incorporate into those goals. Really quickly, thank you to committee members as well as members of the public who attended one or more of the 7 village community meetings. We had a great turnout across the board at the various venues. And then what I wanted to touch upon predominantly is the public comment period. So just really quickly, public comment on those 4 chapters. The 4 chapters are online on our project website, barnstablelcp.com, via the document library tab. And there you can click on each of the chapters. I also wanted to know, I know it's hard to see on the screen, but what's really nice is each chapter, there's a comprehensive information for each chapter. There's the chapter itself, there's the maps associated with the chapter. We even added in the actual presentations by the experts, and communications helped us to clip the physical, the live presentation so that you can go on and rewatch those expert presentations without having to span through any of the meetings. So in one spot, you can look at everything that we've done related to land use, everything for housing, everything for natural resources and infrastructure. And then there's the opportunity again to provide public comment. So that's open to members of the committee as well as member of the public through next Thursday, May 16th. And comments can also be provided. You can provide hard copies. The chapters are at all of our libraries. The infrastructure question is live on the LCP website. I'll send a direct link to all of the committee members. So this question is looking for feedback related to two top priorities for community investment in infrastructure. I apologize, I should have made it a little bit larger on the screen. So just as an idea for investment in infrastructure, some of the examples that we include: sewer, drinking water, connectivity with bike paths, et cetera, improving congested intersections, road conditions, transit access, and then there's also an opportunity for others. So if there's any improvements that the public sees beyond what we've listed as some examples, we're looking for that feedback. So that survey question is live on the website. We'll push it through social media, again, really as a tool to engage the public. This is a long process. We want to keep the public informed as we're making progress to get some feedback. So I'll send out the direct link, and we look forward to your help to promoting it. After Kyle's presentation, we will break out into groups, as mentioned, to talk through the goals and strategies. And just to give you an idea, so there's 13 different topics that fall under economic development. So when we're talking about the goals, we'll be thinking about place-based, zoning and regulatory tools, design review, local business, infrastructure, recreation, economic, education, cultural, visitor-based, healthcare, blue economy, and the growth incentive zone. So those are the topics that we have suggested draft goals and strategies that we'll dive into. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kyle Pedicini to talk about where we are today with economic development, as well as issues, opportunities for the future. Thank you. Unless there was any questions or comments.
Guys good?
Okay, thank you.
Kyle.
Thank you, Kate. Hello, everybody. I'm Kyle Pedicini, Community and Economic Development Planner for the town of Barnstable, here to talk economic development. At first, I wanted to just kind of go over in general what is economic development, because it's kind of a hard concept to define. So economic development is programs, policies, and activities that seek to improve economic well-being and the quality of life for a community. Simply put, I'd say it's promoting the cultivation of community wealth and happiness is really what we're trying to drive at here. So in general, some economic development concepts, this isn't like related to just the town of Barnstable, but just on a general level. Some goals are, creating more jobs and more job variety, keeping existing businesses and attracting new ones. That goes to the job part. Cultivating a better quality of life for residents, a community we can all be proud of and we're all happy in. Encouraging a more productive use of property, promoting community assets, making and selling more local products, attracting more skilled workers to the community, and I think the last one's a big one, fostering local ownership. Locally owned small businesses is the key to that whole community, cultivation of community wealth point, because that's how you're going to keep profits in the community and jobs created. So to go over some recent history of what the town's been doing in economic development sector. So first off, we established regulatory agreement districts in 2004. So that's a flexible tool that can allow development outside traditional zoning if a project provides tangible community benefits. So I didn't include this, but I think we have 23 projects that have been approved since this has been formed in 2004. So that's 23 projects that might not have happened if we didn't have a regulatory agreement in place. And again, in general, we want to, promote that projects comply with existing zoning, because that's reflective of community priorities. But not always will projects fit into that box. So if they can articulate certain tangible community benefits, then it's kind of nice to kind of be able to at least have that flexible tool at our disposal. So the downtown Hyannis Growth Incentive Zone, which was originally established in 2006, was reauthorized in 2018. And that exempts commercial properties from the Cape Cod Commission review, and it encourages a concentrated mix of residential and commercial uses in downtown Hyannis. I'll go into where exactly that is located. I have a map on the next slide. We're also granted exemption from the Cape Cod Commission review for certain size projects in regional economic development centers and industrial areas of town. So being able to kind of streamline permitting for the type of projects that we want and the areas of growth that where we want them is important, because you need to incentivize that growth where you want it. And we also created a permitting coordinator position. So Maggie Flynn is currently in that position in the town of Barnstable. She does a great job. If you're a small business and you want to open up in the town of Barnstable, there are a million different hoops you might have to jump through. Health department, DPW, and Maggie Flynn is kind of the air traffic controller who can direct you as to where you need to go. So it's not so, overbearing when you're existing or you're just starting out in your small business and you got a million other things to think about too. You don't even really want to think about the local permitting, but that's where we have it's where customer service really comes in with our small businesses. So I had mentioned this is the growth incentive zone on the right, and on the left, that's our regional economic development center industrial areas. So this is where we have streamlined permitting from the county level, because this is where we want to incentivize our growth. And the other part of this aspect is, it's smart growth principles. So we want the growth to take place in areas where we have the infrastructure, and in other areas where we don't. That's where we've kind of downzoned. So it's kind of they work in tandem. So we grow in the areas where we want the growth, and we have the infrastructure to handle that. And then we protect our natural resources elsewhere. It's something we've talked about a lot throughout this whole process. So in terms of incentive history, so we have a couple things that incentivize investment in the town of Barnstable. So we have tax increment exemption. So that's relief on property taxes for improvements made to residential buildings in exchange to community benefits such as deed-restricted affordable housing. So 7 TIE applications have been approved since 2022, which is great because that's getting new workforce housing into the community. Another tool, which is very similar but just a slightly different concept, is tax increment financing. So that would be relief on property taxes for new commercial investments in exchange for retaining and creating new, well-paying jobs. We haven't done any sort of TIFs in the past decade, but it might be something we want to look into as a part of this process and updating. I know the town of Yarmouth, for example, in like 2010, they used a TIF to get Shields MRI to locate because they could articulate they had well-paying jobs with good benefits. And with the TIF, there's the but-for kind of protocol. So if the project wouldn't take place but for this tax increment financing, that's how it would be eligible for the process. So it's a good tool to have. So in terms of zoning changes we've made recently, we established a Gateway Medical District in 2017 to allow for multifamily developments, again, to kind of help address our workforce housing problem. We've amended the Highway Business District zoning ordinance in 2019 in response to current market trends to encourage investment in the aging commercial corridor. We updated the zoning for the Cape Cod Mall in 2022 to allow for complementary uses such as a hotel or mixed use with some residential to retail. The medical marijuana zoning was revised in 2022 to relapse some of those separation restrictions. And we've amended the home occupation ordinance in 2023 to expand it in all zoning districts as a matter of right if it meets certain conditions and it's not going to be impactful on the neighborhoods. So again, with zoning, one of the biggest things we did recently was update the downtown Hyannis zoning in 2023. Incentivizes residential and mixed-use development. And from an economic development perspective, I have to say this zoning has worked exactly as intended. We're seeing a lot of targeted investment in underutilized and frankly blighted properties. So to get those to turn from blighted properties into community assets that can help address our workforce housing is a major win for the community and a major win for our tax base and our investment. In terms of the arts sector, we have 2 state-designated cultural districts in town, which is great. Most towns don't even have one, and we have 2. So we have the High Arts Cultural District, and we have the Barnstable Village Cultural District. And we have Melissa Chartrand who works in our office, and she does great work with both of those cultural districts and the type of programming that takes place that draws in visitors and again makes our community a better place to live for our residents, goes to our quality of life. So the High Arts Shanties program, I'm sure most people are familiar with that. That's a program that started in 2005. It was supposed to originally just be a pilot project, but it was so successful that it's continued to this day. It expanded in 2018 into the Hyannis Harbor Overlook area. So over 100 artists participate each year. And if you think about that, that's 100 small businesses that are able to grow and sell their products in the community, which is a great thing. So it's really like a small incubator space for our artists community, which we know is a big part of economic development. We have a big arts community on Cape Cod. We always have, and we always hopefully will. Another thing that happened recently is the town of Barnstable is a transformative development initiative district. So we're one of only 13 in the state. We're a gateway city. So basically, transformative development initiatives opens us up to different pockets of money and technical assistance that are kind of only available to TDI districts, which is great because we've been able to do a lot with that. So again, established in 2022, we're one of only 13 in the state. So some examples of how we've utilized this program. We have a Hyannis Snack Shack, again, food entrepreneurial incubator program. So that is in conjunction with the High Artist Shanties program at the Hyannis Harbor Overlook area. So if we have people who have a home bakery in their house, but they don't have a place to sell their product, this is a great opportunity for them to participate. We're actually still accepting applications for this season. So if you know anybody who wants to apply, please tell them to contact me. But it's no cost, and it's in a highly visible, highly trafficked area in Hyannis. So it's really a great program that I hope we can continue to expand. We used funds from TDI to work with the Hyannis Main Street Business Improvement District to implement a facade program in both 2023 and 2024, which was immensely successful, very well received in the community. So these were matching grants that we gave to businesses in the downtown area to improve their storefronts, their aesthetics, which again makes a better community to live in, but obviously is a big thing for our small business owners. It's not often that they're able to make these type of investments in their properties because it obviously takes a big capital investment. So to be able to kind of, it was really like a public-private partnership program. We gave out $115,000 in 2023, but we estimated over $400,000 were invested in total in the downtown Hyannis area, which is really a great story. So again, TDI also offers us technical assistance. We get access to these experts from the state level that we otherwise wouldn't have access to. So one of the projects we've used that on is our Hyannis Village Green right behind us here. We're working to redesign that to make it a great place that can be utilized for a lot of different things. Another thing I want to call out is Love Live Local's great local business boost program, which was funded partially through TDI last year, which is a great technical assistance program for our local businesses, and it also uses local service providers, so it's a double win for our local business community. Another thing to mention is Cape Town Plaza. This is one of our big commercial plazas in town. So we issued an RFP in 2018 to redevelop Cape Town/Kmart Plaza on 132. WS Development was awarded the bid to lease the plaza, and it's now going to be renamed The Landing in Hyannis. So Whole Foods is going in there. They got floor and decor. So it's an exciting project. It's going to get a facelift and some modernization. So that's always a good thing, and in an important economic area for the town. Something we do at the town level is we maintain businessbarnstable.com, which serves as kind of a clearinghouse for different information for economic developers or small businesses. We send out a every other month newsletter with different sorts of grant news or anything that might be relevant to the business community. So if you're not already signed up for that newsletter, I would strongly encourage that. We have a lot of great resources and information and data on this website. We have a commercial site finder on there. We're always looking to expand it and make it as useful as possible for our business community and for just people at large who want to know about the town of Barnstable. We also completed a Hyannis investment prospectus to help people who might want to be investing in Hyannis understand the benefits of that, which is important because really why putting these kind of things important. Putting these things together is important is it shows the town has its act together. And if you're a business who wants to approach the town, you're going to have someone who's going to answer the phone and actually have a conversation with you. So that's always good to maintain those type of resources. So going into demographics of town of Barnstable, our median household income is $94,387,000, which is slightly above the Cape Cod average of $90,000. But the median sales price for a single-family home is $799,000. When you compare the median wage of $64,000 to the salary you would need to purchase the medium price single-family home, you can see the discrepancy. It's rather large, $64,000 to $199,000. I mean, that's why we have a housing crisis right there. It's a bit of the wages being too low and the housing being too high. So whatever we can do to address those two inputs is how we're going to have to really tackle the crisis. And our average age is 47.1, so we are older than the median age of Massachusetts. So with a bit of an older population, 30% of our residents are over 60. That does bring about both opportunities and challenges for the town. And just to note, our top employers, we're very fortunate to have a hospital in the town of Barnstable. That's where a lot of our really good paying jobs are. So Cape Cod Healthcare is obviously our top employer. The town of Barnstable itself is a top employer. Cape Cod Community College, which is another great asset to have in Barnstable, Cape Air, and Dialogic Inc. So this is just kind of accentuates the point I was previously making. This is countywide, so it's not just the town of Barnstable, but I took this from one of the county things. So you can see COVID has only exacerbated the problem of housing prices, going through the roof and wages not keeping up. So that only exacerbates our problem where it's tough to find housing for the workforce, and if you don't have housing for the workforce, that's an issue. So in terms of our industries in town, you can see educational, healthcare, and social services is kind of our top one. So the left column is people who live in the town of Barnstable and what their professions are, and the right one is our jobs in the town of Barnstable. So you can see, a bit of the discrepancy there, and where we're a net importer and a net exporter of jobs. Economic development challenges. I'm running through this fast, but we'll obviously have questions at the end. Economic development challenges in the town of Barnstable. I already talked about the mismatch of housing prices and our workforce wages. That's a big problem. If we don't have a place for our workforce to live, we're not going to have a healthy workforce, and we're not going to be able to have all the industries that we want to attract here. And if an industry is looking to locate in the town of Barnstable, but there's no place for their potential workers to live, they're not going to locate in the town of Barnstable. I had mentioned we had we're on the older side of the population, so that impacts. We have less of a participation in our workforce because we have more retirees here, so that impacts the workforce as well. Probably our biggest challenge, though, is that we're a seasonal economy, and relative to our peer communities on Cape Cod, we're less seasonal. We're more year-round, but relative to communities across the country, we are seasonal. And you think about, why don't we have this in town? Why don't we have that in town? Well, because most businesses can only make money here 1 or 2 months out of the year, real money. So, I'd love to see a Topgolf here, but Topgolf's not coming when they can only make money 1 month out of the year in August, really, on Cape Cod. So that's a huge impact on what we're going to see for industries here, what kind of jobs we can attract here. When we're so seasonal, and we need to diversify our economy more. We're very dependent on our tourism industry, which is a great industry, and that's what Cape Cod was built on. But that's very sensitive to global economic trends. You think when there's a recession, people aren't going on vacation. They're not spending more money. So that's a problem. We need to diversify as much as possible, just like you'd want to diversify your economic portfolio as much as possible. And we don't have a whole lot of high-paying industries such as, the sciences or the STEM. We don't have a Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. We don't have a widget factory manufacturing. And we don't have large tracts of land that would be needed for something like that, or even something like agricultural. There's not a lot of big, large tracts of land in the town of Barnstable. So that impacts things. We have limited public transportation options. I think we've heard that throughout the process. So if your workforce is dependent on being able to use a car, and they're not going to be able to take a bus to get to their potential jobs, that impacts the workforce. But let's go half glass full and let's talk opportunities. So I had mentioned that we had an older population. Well, that means we also have a high demand for medical services, and medical services are a great, high-paying industry. So what can we do to attract more medical uses and good jobs? Think about all the people who have to drive off Cape for different appointments or to see different doctors. That's all economic value that we're losing off Cape. So how can we have those services locate in the town of Barnstable, where we're going to have good paying jobs and that benefits our residents? They don't have to drive off Cape anymore. So that's something that we have potential for growth in. Obviously, blue economy. We want have industries that take advantage of our natural resources but don't degrade them, and fit in with the character of Cape Cod. So blue economy is absolutely should be a priority. We were ranked 4th in the state in 2018 in terms of total commercial fishing value vessel per community. So that's I think we're higher than the city of Boston, which is really telling. So the commercial fishing industry is a big one in the town of Barnstable. We've been talking about how we want to think bold and big throughout this whole process. So is something like a Chatham Fish Pier type of project in Hyannis, maybe off of Pleasant Street, is that something that this community would want to see? That would be beneficial for both our commercial fishermen, but it'd also be the tourism driver, because I don't know if you've ever been to the one in Chatham. It's awesome. You get to see a bunch of seals. It's pretty cool. But it's also a working waterfront where they have the necessary facilities they need to be able to offload and process their catch. We could definitely look into trying to expand that, something like that in Hyannis. A seafood processing plant. So right now, when the seafood comes in Hyannis or even Chatham, most of it goes off in New Bedford where it's processed. So again, that's economic value we're losing. So maybe we can utilize some sort of incentive to get a good seafood processing plant in our industrial area that has good paying jobs, so we don't lose that economic value and it all stays on Cape Cod and in the town of Barnstable. And we do have natural resources and polluted estuaries in terms of like our ponds with algae blooms and whatnot. That could actually be an opportunity because we have a whole lot of clean water technologies that are being piloted nowadays and being developed. So how can we be an incubator for those type of technologies and kind of the next gen of possibly high paying jobs? As this is not an issue that's going to go away anytime soon in terms of clean water and polluted estuaries. So we need to be looking in the future as to what's the next gen of good paying jobs that we're going to want to see in the town of Barnstable. And how can local trade schools and the community college be better incorporated into local workforce development for the next gen of issues that we're going to face? So you think about like all the sewer projects that are going to be implemented over Cape Cod over the next few decades. Do we have local workforce to be able to do that? Or are we going to be bringing people in from over Cape Cod? We should be training local workers so that, again, the wages and the profits stay here. Something that I've always thought about is, there's a high demand for sports facility, indoor recreational fields, and like conference space, just all of Cape Cod, but the town of Barnstable specifically could really lead that charge. Again, think about all the families that have to travel off Cape for their different children soccer tournaments or whatever. Again, that's all economic value we're losing. They're going off Cape. They're eating lunch in a different community. We could reverse those trends. We could try to bring people to Cape Cod instead of people who are leaving Cape Cod. And again, this also goes to our quality of life conversation. Sports facilities, indoor fields. That's something that I think people in the community would like to see. COVID shift to more remote work has made Cape Cod and town of Barnstable in general a more attractive place to work from home. That's a good thing. How can we build on that? Should we be expanding broadband infrastructure so that there's more places with high-speed internet access so that you can work from home? And another big benefit in the town of Barnstable has, we have great community partners for economic development here in town, which is a great thing. The Hyannis Main Street Business Improvement District, the Chamber, E4All, Love Live Local, they're great community partners and they help us get stuff done, frankly. So looking at what other communities do and stuff that the town of Barnstable could look into. So look at the town of Falmouth. They have a Falmouth Economic Development Industrial Corporation, EDIC, who was established in 1984 with the goal of increasing business and industrial investment, job opportunities in Falmouth. What they're doing a lot of recently is broadband. So they're taking on the broadband issue for the business community, and they're kind of getting an economies of scale with Open Cape and saying, we'll sign up X amount of businesses, so that'll bring down the sign-up costs for the businesses. That's great. That's something that maybe the town of Barnstable wants to look into. So also redevelopment authorities is again another thing the town could look into. Plymouth and Wareham have them. They're quasi-public agencies established to redevelop blighted areas for industrial, commercial, residential, or recreational purposes. So Wareham uses it mostly to purchase dilapidated buildings to repurpose as flood-resilient buildings, open space, and parking. Plymouth uses it a lot to facilitate brownfield remediation, so polluted sites, and make them ready for development and investment and affordable housing development. Locally, the town of Provincetown in Yarmouth, they have large tourism funds, which we also have a tourism fund in the town of Barnstable, but they invest in it a little bit more. It's funded through a portion of the rooms and meals tax, and it provides funding for special events, public improvements, and marketing. So Barnstable has a similar fund, but it's at a smaller scale. So maybe that's something we want to look into if that's a community priority. But the other component of that is there's also discussion of a Cape-wide tourism destination marketing district to be established, which would provide funding for the same sort of projects. I'll let Paul get into that more because that's the Cape Cod Chamber leading the charge. Another example, Winston-Salem Restaurant Row. So low-interest loan program designed to incentivize new dinner restaurants in the downtown. This is just to show you, like, in Winston-Salem, the community priority is we don't have enough dinner restaurants in the downtown, so what can we do about that? So they created their own program, low-interest loan program, to get more restaurants in. So really, it's like, what's the community priority? What do we want to see more of? And then we can kind of build programs around that end. So again, I urge you to think boldly and think about what you want, what kind of industries you want to see locating to Barnstable, and then we can talk about how we can achieve that end. Another example is the Berkshire Community Land Trust, a nonprofit organization that owns property and holds it in perpetuity for the benefit of the community, provides affordable access to lands for housing, farmsteads, retail, and manufacturing. So it kind of goes back to the whole point of, like, not a whole lot of land for agricultural. So if you can hold it in a community land trust and be able to lease it out at affordable rates for agricultural uses that are beneficial to the community, maybe that's not a bad idea. So next steps for Barnstable, what we've been doing recently, what we'll be doing in the near future for economic development. Something that's pretty exciting is we utilized almost $300,000 in CDBG funding to expand high-speed fiber optic infrastructure in downtown Hyannis, allow for low-cost hookups for residents and businesses in the area. So this kind of goes to what I was talking about town of Falmouth doing. But this is something we might want to expand upon in both downtown Hyannis, but other areas of town. Broadband has a lot of value for both businesses and our residents. But we've heard from businesses in the heat of the summertime when, like, there's a high demand on broadband, they can't even run credit cards. That's a problem. So it's also a problem that Comcast, we have one entity that has basically a monopoly. That's not good for anybody other than the monopoly. So what can we do to encourage as much competition in that area as possible? I found it interesting that I think it was Comcast was making upgrades in the town of Falmouth, and it's interesting that they started in the town of Falmouth, who's bringing in competitors. So when you bring in competitors, it urges the Comcast to actually improve their service for the residents. Let's see, where am I? Oh yeah, so along those lines, we are participating in the state's digital equity planning program through the Cape Cod Commission and through Mass Broadband Institute. So that'll position us in the future for possible grants in terms of trying to implement broadband solutions. It's kind of a first step in trying to evaluate what our needs would be for a town-wide. So yeah, need more competition and additional capacity for data processing. Hyannis Harbor is obviously a huge economic driver for the town of Barnstable. So the town is currently working with a consultant to develop a Hyannis Harbor master plan to create a cohesive strategy for the mix of uses, land uses around the harbor. We also obviously have a lot of water uses around the harbor, and they're competing uses. So how can we again, make a cohesive strategy that makes sense for the area. And we also have, obviously, climate resiliency and sea level rise issues in that area. So how can we respond to that and think ahead to the future? Strengthen the connection of downtown Hyannis to the harbor area, the whole walkway to the sea idea the town's been working on for 3-4 decades. It can always be improved because that's an important connection to make. Again, Great Streets Hyannis. I hope you have heard about this project before, but if not, the Great Streets Hyannis project is reversion of two-way travel in downtown Hyannis. So Main Street, South Street, Old Colony, we're turning all the one-ways to two-ways. And that will improve walkability of the downtown. It's going to make it a more attractive and safe place to visit for all sorts of modes of transportation, for cars, for bikes, for pedestrians. And from an economic development perspective, an example of a conversion and how it works, Savannah, Georgia in the 1990s, after they went from one-way to two-way, businesses on the street rose by 50%. That's a pretty telling number because, again, you got more people in the area, you got more patrons of your businesses. And another thing we're working on is the Downtown Hyannis District Improvement Financing Program. So we got a grant from the state to work with a consultant to look into this. So that would establish a funding stream derived from new growth tax dollars in a certain area and get invested back in the same area. So we're looking at the growth incentive zone in Hyannis. So basically what that means is new projects in the growth incentive zone, the new growth dollars, a portion of that would be directed back into the growth incentive zone for public improvement and economic development projects. It's a flexible source of funding, so we can use it for creative projects such as the facade grant or beautification programs. So I think that's a really nice story because we're getting all this new investment in the area, but we don't want to gentrify out our existing businesses. So we need to provide them some support, and we're taking basically some of those profits from the new investment and investing that back into our existing community. So it's something we're looking into. If it makes sense, it'll be coming, more to come on that in the next couple of months. I believe that's my last slide. That's my last slide, so I'm happy to take questions. I know I went through that fast, so apologies, but yeah, happy to take questions.
Questions? Cheryl?
Hi, thank you, and nice presentation. I'm kind of curious that you gave an example of Savannah, Georgia, where there was a 50% alleged increase after the two-way traffic. I'd be very interested to know if they did other things at the same time, simply because, and I could be wrong, it's just that you still have the same amount of cars. They're just going different directions.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have
They
thought
probably
that-
had a lot of, vacant properties then that got reinvested in because more people were coming to the downtown area.
But I don't see why that would increase. I can see definitely how better parking and more parking would increase the amount, but you can only get so many, unless they widen the streets and made it two roads
But
each way.
more people are coming downtown. More people are walking downtown. It's not just about the car capacity. So if more people are downtown patronizing your businesses, more businesses are going to be able to survive. So if there's more activity in the area, there's going to be more economic, value.
There's also, when you have two-way traffic, it's slower. And so as traffic is slowed down, you can see the businesses on either side. And right now it's used as a cut through.
Yep.
Because it's just cars like speeding down Main Street and they're kind of missing what's going on.
That part makes sense. I just didn't see any more cars. Yeah.
I might have to defer to Amanda for most of my answers, but
Thank you.
I live in Katuitt, and I also am old enough to be here when we were one-way in the summer and two-way in the winter. So if I want to go someplace in Hyannis from Katuitt, I either have to go down South Street or North Street to get where I want to go. And I think, I've been saying for years that that's been a great, huge diversion for Main Street because people are just
Funnels them away.
zipping by other ways.
Yeah.
So I really think that would be a major increase in business for people on Main Street if it was two-way.
absolutely. Yeah. We don't want it to continue to be just a way out of town. Right now it's basically you got to go down Main Street to get out of town. That's not what we want for our heart of our commercial corridor.
Kyle, can you define, for the general public, the gateway city? You said we're a gateway city, but define why we're a gateway city.
That's a good question. Why
Some
are
of
we a
it's on
gateway
the,
city?
some of it's based on our average income.
Yeah, it's
and social
demographics
justice mix,
and
yeah.
so
Well, and each region needs to have one, right, in the state, and this just sort of was a...
I don't think they have to have one, but they have been designated, and it's generally communities that need a little love,
right.
or a lot of love.
Right. So there's certain sort of environmental justice kind of type indicators that trigger it. Yeah,
Right. But it's also a benefit when we're applying for grants.
absolutely. It's a huge benefit when we're applying for grants.
And there's a lot more funding opportunities available
Yeah.
for gateways.
Lindsay,
There's some grant opportunities that are only available to gateway cities. So
right? Lindsay?
Kyle, I had a question. Why aren't we doing more to encourage broadband in this town? It's kind of ridiculous that we don't have it.
yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it takes it obviously takes funding, and it takes working with a community partner like an Open Cape to implement it. When I worked in the town of Yarmouth, it's also like it's a bit of a confusing issue to understand. So like when I worked in the town of Yarmouth, we had this idea. There's a spine along Route 28 in Yarmouth where the Open Cape is laid, and we wanted to use wireless solutions on the utility poles, basically use like Wi-Fi and zap it into different areas, commercially and residentially. But boy, do I not know how to do that. I barely even know what I'm talking about right now. So you really need like a buy-in from a lot of different stakeholders. The IT department really needs to be bought into it because they actually speak the language. So it's something I'm confident we can make progress on, but it's not going to be quick overnight because it needs to be thought about comprehensively. And there's the whole security and the communities that are really ahead of the game on it have their light plants already, so they already have the infrastructure in place. So like a place like Westfield that provides electricity, they have all the all the trucks that can go out and repair the broadband. So the town doesn't have that, and I don't think we want to get in the business of that. So it's about working with a community partner like Open Cape and trying to kind of build their capacity. So yeah, but what's
the
nice is
last
that
mile.
the state is actually investing a lot in broadband now. You got the MBI who's dedicated just to broadband. So sewer was the last infrastructure that the Cape was laid on, and broadband will hopefully not be the next one, but it could be if we don't invest in it. So we got to get ahead of the curve on broadband, or else we're going to fall behind.
Well, and I think in Falmouth, what you saw was there was a very strong group of local residents who are driving that, and the Falmouth EDIC. So I think it really isn't just on the town. Like the public really has to get involved and engaged and push that agenda forward.
And that's where having an EDIC is helpful.
Yep.
So you're right, and it's the cost, the last mile is what is borne on the business person, and Open Cape, currently their business plan is to light up businesses where the residents want it too. But I will tell you, having been involved in the last 2 major surveys of the Cape to ask people, are you happy with your broadband? No. If you got faster broadband, would you pay for it? No.
Yeah.
So the pain point has to be,
Absolutely.
right there.
So that's why the economies of scale come into place, where
Exactly.
Falmouth had a bunch of businesses band together, so it brought down the sign-up cost.
Exactly. That's what they're doing in Falmouth. If
Yeah.
you get the mass, you can bring down the
Right.
price.
Can you talk about what you said there was CDBG money used in downtown Hyannis? Can you talk a little bit more about that effort?
Yeah. I don't know if Elizabeth could. She is more involved in it.
Thank you, Elizabeth Jenkins, Director of Planning and Development. So the town had approximately $300,000 of COVID money that came from this community development block grant that was unspent. So that will be essentially a 2-part program, which we hope to roll out imminently in partnership with Open Cape, that will essentially wire a circle around downtown Hyannis from South Street. They already have a backbone, a spine, thank you, on Main Street, but it will encompass the rest of the downtown Hyannis area. So a portion of the funds will be used for that infrastructure improvement, and then we'll have an associated improvement that will help either residents or small businesses with the connection cost, because there is a cost that you have to pay to Open Cape in order to connect to that system. So that final mile cost will be paid for by the program as well. So I just talked to Open Cape this week in terms of marketing that and getting that word out.
Awesome. And because I can attest, as somebody who has a retail store and office here on downtown Hyannis, we would get kicked off of our internet every single time we ran a sale.
On a
So,
rainy day.
Yeah, and if it was windy, rainy,
Too busy,
the internet
yeah.
dropping on.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been
businesses, so-
great
It's not
to have sort of Open Cape in as a partner as we bring in new residential development. We always connect them with Open Cape, so
Yeah.
they can have the opportunity to approach those folks about pre-wiring that infrastructure when we are doing larger infrastructure projects, putting in conduit at a minimum for broadband, so that can happen in the future. So, really, again, looking to build out that system.
Cheryl?
Elizabeth, I have a question for you. The 300,000 grant, is that the one that was mentioned in the paperwork that we received for maybe it was our 5th or 6th meeting, it was earlier on, like in the first year in the autumn, that you had discussed being granted that you weren't sure.
I don't
about.
recall.
You
We have
remember?
been working on contracts and terms for a long time with them, so it's very possible, but I'm not sure what you're referring to.
All right, thank you. Yep.
I think it would be a good idea to resurrect the cable committee that we had for years. Have a dedicated committee.
Have a broadband committee.
Yeah.
A real quick question, I don't know who can answer, but the Hyannis Harbor Master Plan, will that be a subset document to our LCP?
Yeah, perhaps it's something that we can talk about. Yeah, kind of like referring, our recreation plan, we refer to the open space goals. I kind of envision it being similar. Yeah, yes.
That's great.
I have a question.
Sue and
Sorry,
then
I'll
Amanda.
stop talking.
Susan and then Amanda.
Are we working on a harbor plan right now?
Yes.
Can we have access to that, or when is that?
Yeah, we're in the process of updating it, or in the process of working with a consultant to develop one, basically. So we're actually planning on having a public meeting on that in early June. So yeah, we're hoping to have a deliverable of it by the end of by July.
Oh, good. Okay.
So yeah, we're hoping that could be incorporated into this document.
My second question is, when does the town's contract with Comcast Xfinity expire?
Ooh, I don't know. I can look into that.
I mean, is it within the next 25 years, or?
Yeah, I'm not privy to
really
any of that information, unfortunately.
And I seem to have read or heard that Verizon is making some inroads into Barnstable, not in my area, but
Yeah.
is that true?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, that's the whole thing about Cape Cod is for a lot of these people, it's not big enough of a market to make the investment because it's a huge investment to lay the groundwork for that. So I've personally wanted Verizon to come for a while, but I'll believe it when I see it because I've heard that stuff for a while, but it never seems to actually materialize. And it goes back to, again, not a whole lot of year-rounders on Cape Cod. So, yeah, it's something I hope to see because, again, competition's a good thing.
Would be great.
So Susan, part of it is Cape Cod's long stretched out, right? And I read that Verizon has realized that the cities have lost population and people can work from home, and they're preferring to do it in places like Cape Cod. So Verizon's business plan is to move out beyond some of their core cities to get to where people want to live, to work. And I guess we're finally on the map with them, because 20 years ago, they told us, no way, there's not enough there. And we're waiting to go, they didn't want to lay fiber, they wanted to go totally wireless.
I feel like I talked to somebody about this, and they said
Sure.
yes, that they were in some places
Yeah,
in Barnstable.
suppose I
but
read it
not-
too.
So yeah,
For me.
that's the whole COVID shift to more remote work on Cape Cod being beneficial to us. So, there you go.
There you go.
Good.
Amanda?
Switching gears, the tourism dollars. You said that there are other towns on the Cape that invest a lot more than Barnstable, which seems interesting because we are the largest town on the Cape. Can you speak about their models and why is it that Barnstable
I can speak to Yarmouth because I used to manage that program. So Yarmouth, it's based off of a formula, a portion of the rooms and meals tax over a certain base amount. So it usually ends up being close to like $500,000 a year, and they have to use a certain percentage for physical improvement. Some of it's on marketing. They also pay a lot they have usually $100,000 available every year for special events. So that's why they have events like the Cape Cod St. Patrick's Day Parade and the Seaside Festival. They give those like $25,000 a lot of years. In Barnstable, it's held flat at around like $127,000 for a long time now. So really, that means it's actually shrunk when you consider inflation and how much you can actually buy with that money. So that's where hopefully the TDMD is a big part of the equation here, because we have a whole lot of hotel rooms in town that will generate some funding for the TDMD. So I'm hopeful that that's kind of a big part of the solution here in terms of catching up to our peer communities. Because, we know special events are an economic development driver, especially in the shoulder seasons when we don't already have people here. So to be able to invest in that, we do get return on investment on that. So, yeah, it's something we might want to talk about, and look into if it's a community priority.
I'll tell you one thing the town did, Amanda, is they took, when there was an increase in meals tax, they diverted that into water solution infrastructure. So where Yarmouth might not have done that. same
Yarmouth had
thing.
a special legislation set up, so they have a formula that it goes into, so it's not really even like discussed much of it. It's just, here's the formula, this is the number, we're voting on it. So it makes it a simpler process from that perspective, whereas, yeah, Barnstable, it's just been a steady number.
It's been steady.
Yeah.
Did you have another question? So I have a question, real valid points about, and I have done the studies and I've seen the studies, but I believe the studies, sports tourism.
Yep.
And there was a project underway in Independence Park,
Yep.
and they cleared the land, and they bought the steel, and then the whole thing went bust.
Right.
Anything new on that?
We had
sports
we've heard
indoors?
some people who are interested in that, but it's going to take a lot of money to do something like that. It's going to take a lot of investment. So that's where maybe something like a tax increment financing program could help attract it to Cape Cod and into the town of Barnstable. But
Site's still available? Site's not being used?
yeah,
looked at for
I'm not
anything
sure
else?
exactly that specific site. I haven't heard anything new on that. No, I'd love to see it personally.
Same thing with a conference center.
Right.
Right? We can put heads in beds, we can put butts in restaurant seats, but we can't get them all together in a room for a meeting, which I guess you can all just get on Zoom now, but that has always been a limiting factor. And the largest contiguous space to do that has been in downtown Hyannis, which is great. It's great for downtown, but it's not great space, let's put
Right.
it that way. And people hear the word convention center and they wig out. We have been suggesting in prior iterations is a meeting house,
Yeah.
right? Get a meeting house where people, you're not having to have a hotel attached to it. You have a place where people can get to by walking or transportation, and you can have other things happening in the shoulder seasons.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Because we are a leisure destination. We have not built the infrastructure to be anything other than a leisure destination. And some people say, don't screw up my leisure destination. I don't want to come there and work. But, I think that there's a lot to be said for that kind of a viewpoint. And I would say your chart showed that tourism is not the driving factor in here. And I've been saying this to people for years. Healthcare and construction and then tourism. Tourism is important.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And I will also argue somebody somewhere always has money to go on vacation.
You're not wrong.
But it is totally discretionary spending. So if they don't want to spend it, you can't make them. Megan?
So I had kind of two questions here. The TIF,
Yep.
well-paying jobs, what would that include and how is that determination made? And for my second question, on General Patton, I think, right off Burses, I can't remember exactly what year, but it was pretty recently, one of the houses there sold for $500,000. And that's not a premier neighborhood.
Yes.
So that increases the assessed value of that neighborhood, or has the potential to, which increases property tax, and that I worry about the gentrification of that area. While yes, it could certainly use improvement, there are people that are a part of our community that's where they live, and I would hate to see them pushed out. So I'm wondering if there's like a tax abatement program, especially after COVID, for property taxes, especially if they're year-round rentals that Barnstable could be a part of, because it's kind of, I can't imagine, I looked at the time, but I can't remember, that house was nowhere close to 500K before.
Yeah. So abatements for taxes would go through the assessing office. One thing that the town of Barnstable does that not every town on the Cape does is a residential tax exemption for people who live here year-round, which is a great thing to incentivize kind of year-round use and does give you a bit of a break.
Isn't that for homeowners, not necessarily renters?
That's true. Yeah. So I'm not aware of one for renters. To your first question about the TIF process, so there would be a TIF advisory committee that would look into that question about what exactly is a well-paying job. They'd compare it to the median wage and the median income, and they'd want to, you want to see benefited jobs that have health insurance and all that good stuff. So you compare it to basically what is the median wage in town, and then does it exceed that? And there's like a committee that would look into that and review it.
Can we get possibly some kind of documentation for that? Because I'd be very interested in including that and
Sure.
just looking at that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Just
Sue?
Yeah, I have two. Does the median income, does that include benefits?
No.
No, that's just salary, okay. The tourism money that you were just talking about, how does that overlap or not with the business improvement district?
It does not. So the tourism fund is funded through the rooms and meals tax of, I think it's actually just rooms.
rooms.
Yeah, just rooms. It's partly meals tax in Yarmouth. So it's funded just a portion through the rooms tax. The bid is a special assessment for properties in a certain area. So while they might do similar functions in terms of marketing and special events, they are different. So the bid.
Bid is a little bit like privatizing.
The bid is basically, it's a
or-
business it's a business improvement district, so.
The cost is to the businesses directly.
Yeah, whereas the tourism fund is
property
funded
owner.
through,
Property
tourism fund is
owner.
funded through people who are staying at hotels and they're paying a portion of their taxes going into the fund.
I think one good fact for people to know about occupancy tax, which is it is. It's occupancy whether you're in a hotel, motel, B&B with more than 3 rooms, or a short-term rental. We still rank very low in that, even though it's a double-digit tax, it's one of the highest taxes you'll pay.
Right.
We still rank low nationally. And there's been communities across the nation that have successfully funded things like youth sports infrastructure, meeting houses. They build the infrastructure from that particular tax, and
Right.
it kind of feeds itself.
Yep.
And there's Oklahoma City built tremendous scull rowing center on their river, and just did some really cool. They built a brand new, beautiful library. They built another convention center. It's Oklahoma City; they have more space, but it works. It's just that you have to convince your guest that it's okay.
Right.
And then you have to convince your community that you want to build it.
You
So
got-
there
you
are
gotta-
ways to finance it.
Yeah, you got to maintain competition with your peer, other like New York and those type of places where I've heard the kind of tipping point is 20%. If you can stay under that, you're probably not going to affect the demand too much, but any higher than that, you will. So yeah, that's a good point.
14.45% for occupancy. Mhm. Which is now inclusive of the 2.75 that goes into the Water Protection Trust.
Yep.
What percentage are our property taxes? Well, that's a whole
Yeah.
banana, that's a whole other banana.
I don't know.
Don't
what the
have
rate
that
is.
one memorized, Cheryl. I spent my whole life working on that. But the property taxes will continue to be a percentage, but then the assessment changes. So you get
Right.
you get crazy.
Yeah, a lot of times your percentage might decrease, but your amount of taxes goes up because your assessment goes up. So.
Which speaks to what Megan was talking earlier. Like if
Yeah.
if all of a sudden our property values rise exponentially, I mean, I think there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, even in the kind of places that are supposed to be more starter homes, if those get out of reach, then that's a problem.
Toast, yeah. Okay.
There was another home that sold on Spring Street for just under 500K, and it was 600 square feet.
Yep,
Oh, supply and demand.
yep. Market forces.
Yeah, for sure.
I have
Oh, sorry, Amanda.
a couple of comments. One, I think it's important, just for clarification for probably the public and maybe some other people on the LCPC, the Hyannis Main Street Business Improvement District is not publicly funded. It is voted on, the district is voted by the property owners every 10 years. It's reauthorized, and it is a special tax assessment on those properties within and so they fund themselves, and I just think that's important for the public to know, and it's for the benefit of the downtown, which benefits the whole town. Also, in terms of meeting space, I think what we have now is just, in the town of Barnstable is, it's basically, we're at a ceiling with certain types of events that we can host. There's a bunch of off-season conferences that come down, but they can't get bigger conferences than what we already have. So I think having more of that space. And then back to the tourism dollars, are you able to tell us what that $127,000 is spent on?
Yep. So we partner with different local organizations, Cape Cod Chamber, the local chamber, the BID, and we work with them on basically marketing the town and bringing in different visitor groups and stuff like that. We also use it for some arts and culture programming and some economic development type projects. So we recently purchased Placer AI, which gives us data insights into different events and when do we have a lot of people coming into the downtown and all that good stuff. So
It's a great tool.
yeah, it is a good tool. So yeah, I'd be happy to share with the committee like a whole breakdown. But it's on special events, it's on marketing, it's on bringing people into town.
There's a focus, excuse me, on attracting business to the Hyannis Youth and Community Center. So the ice rinks and the facility there. So you see the lobster pot hockey tournaments happen there. That's a good example.
We also fund operation of the visitor center on the village green.
Yes, you do. I need some more chips. Okay. Any other questions? Great presentation, Kyle.
Thank you.
There's a lot more to know behind there, but I think now we want to go to the back of the room and have our breakout sessions. Well, we know that you have to leave by 7:15. Let's hope we're done by 7:30, but if everyone's having a really productive session, then we'll play it by ear. How about that? Sound okay? Okay.
Magic.
And one of our members summed it up that the biggest challenges to local business are often permitting and access to capital. So we talked about under the access to capital programs such as microgrants or access to collateral sometimes can be the biggest barriers for local business. And then on the flip side of that, continuing to improve customer service on the town level to attract and retain businesses, address cumbersome, time-consuming, expensive permitting processes. We talked a lot about supporting public transportation and multimodal transportation, both from the perspective of a visitor as well as somebody who is in the workforce here, being able to give them multimodal options to access either where they work or where they want to visit. We talked a lot about sort of emerging sectors and how to grow and incentivize the types of businesses that we want to create. Some of the types of businesses we talked about were, well, we had a number of them. One I thought that was particularly cool was like horseshoe crab farming, really thinking about that whole blue economy section. You know, how do we take some of these innovative things that you see on the Cape? We talked about the need for expanded co-working spaces for small businesses and having a plan particularly to address the impacts on businesses of sewer and other roadway construction. We spend a lot of time on blue economy, so coming back to that idea of sectors and emerging businesses that we want to find ways to attract and incentivize. All sorts of great ideas. Sharks, water quality, what are a couple of the other ones? Basically figuring out how to, ocean recycling, all of these things that tie into both what we have here, sometimes see as challenges, how do we turn them into profitable economic opportunity, attract businesses, promote startups, create business incubator space to start to encourage this. Also, the flip side of that would be the educational side. You know, how do we attract partnerships with educational organizations, really stand that up at the highest levels of our organization to attract perhaps satellite educational programs that can capitalize, again, on our blue economy, work in partnership with other educational institutions and the Cape Cod Community College to expand that opportunity. We talked about lacking infrastructure at some of our harbors, that the cost of mooring a boat in Hyannis Harbor is excessive compared to other Cape communities, which is hurting the commercial fishing fleet. We talked about the need for transient moorings, especially in downtown Hyannis. And Barnstable Harbor, we talked about the fact that there are no dedicated commercial slips and the ability to support more aquaculture, either, again, through slips or through dredging, and how to bring seafood direct to market. Blue Economy AmeriCorps was a really another really interesting idea. We talked unanimous agreement in the need for upgrades to broadband infrastructure and Wi-Fi from the business and residents perspective, you know, really with an equity focus. How do we create a plan and act on that quickly? Again, under infrastructure, talked about transit and enhanced transportation options. And we spent a lot of time on the healthcare sector. Again, another one of those types of businesses. How can we explore incentives to encourage more healthcare providers, specifically specialty ones, dental, ophthalmology, dermatology, pediatric care, and encourage those jobs and have those services available here. Explore the barriers that might exist regarding health insurance coverage and limitations and billing rates. You know, those are sort of bigger issues, but might have very large impacts relative to who might be willing to locate here from a provider perspective. We talked about engaging Cape Cod Hospital in their long-range planning, specifically from a land use perspective, but also from the type of care that we hope that they can provide in the future. How do we evaluate land uses surrounding the campus, encourage them to continue to cluster and keep services concentrated? We talked about exploring allowing adult use retail marijuana, allowing jobs and tax revenue along with all those associated business operations, and create housing for traveling nurses. There are over 270 traveling nurses at Cape Cod Hospital that many times don't have a place to live.
That's right.
So that is what we got through. Thank you.
Wow, zippy. Team 2.
We did not talk about sharks, which is unfortunate. So the first page that we had was regarding play space. And we actually agreed that maybe we need to redefine that header to be a little bit more specific about what we're talking about. And what the group really was referring to is making it more regarding very specific goals and strategies for each of our locations. Whatever strategy we're seeking needs to be very specific to the geography, the culture, and all the specific parameters around what specific strategy we're looking at. We reworked that policy to add words for locally owned businesses as opposed to just generally entrepreneurs. And again, when we talk about diversity, not talking about just geography, but also talking about culture. And also when we talk about the market, we're talking not just about our local markets, but the national markets and sometimes regional markets. Under strategies, again, talking about the economic impact assessments, looking at project specificity and industry specificity and what kind of mitigation can support those types of those projects as you analyze those assessments. And then when we're talking about incentivizing local developers and business owners to reinvest profits in Barnstable, we're also talking about programs in which we can support workforce housing, so incentivizing that type of housing to support our economic engine. Under design review, looking for, we discussed a lot about adding design review criteria into site plan review potentially, and we discussed the nuances and the differences between design review and historic review. In the sections for local business, in the policy, just adding that specificity for local, retain and strengthen local business in the town of Barnstable. One of the strategies we reworked a little bit to increase commercial tax base by encouraging investment in areas identified as appropriate for growth and removing some of those maybe more broader words to strengthen that strategy. And then the last strategy there, retain in-house community development and planning resources and collaborate on economic development efforts. We worked the last line there to talk about collaborating with our partners throughout the Cape. We spent a lot of time also on the blue economy, and one item that we really wanted to highlight in the policy is having a lens on building on our traditional regional economy. So everything talks about essentially creating, and we've had historically we've had a blue economy that has thrived, and so understanding that history and building upon the traditions are included in the updated policy. And we did strike the specific language for the foundation and the alliance, et cetera, though recognizing we want to collaborate with different organizations. We thought that might be a little bit too specific for this plan. Under strategies, we've added an item for education, so support the education of and development of and growth of and retention of the innovative technologies that can be shared and exported. We talk about strategies to seek higher wages, focusing on environmental jobs in the blue economy, again, education through the blue economy, programs and partnering with groups such as the Cape Cod Community College to strengthen science programs and support and understand the blue economy for future generations. we got to the growth incentive zone section, and we talked about supporting town or economic development, additional economic development programs, and talking about, well, it wouldn't be under the growth incentive zone, but similar ways in which other village centers could have partnerships. The growth incentive zone has the Hyannis Main Street Business Improvement District. It also has the Transformative Development Initiative Partnership. So what are maybe some local partnerships that other villages could seek? And then in the strategies, we talk about, so when we talk about the first strategy of identifying specific actions designed to support and attract businesses, and then collaborate with these different stakeholders, we wanted to also expand to include residents who live, work, and play in the area and other community members. And I think one more. Yes, and we got to the last one, the visitor-based sector. We agreed on enhance and expand the walkway to the sea. And we thought of additional ways we could strengthen that with maybe more unique harbor uses that could align with the uses that are there, like things like water taxis and supporting the restaurants on the water. We 100% agreed to improve traffic, which I think everyone can agree on, and ways in which we can improve the economic visitor-based sector in the downtown area. We talked about the buses that come through downtown Hyannis and ways in which we can improve their trips here through destinations and parking, et cetera. And then lastly, things to support ecotourism. We highlighted eco-lodges, glamping, and then lastly, streamlining permitting. So kind of reworking the last line there to streamline permitting for hotel, motels, and the like. I think that's everything.
Great. We didn't mention it because you guys did. You also talked about sharks. So we didn't have to. Okay.
Could I just add something?
Sure.
This just came to me. So in the section on the blue economy about working with the educational community and workforce development organizations to help them target curriculum, there, I think the idea of that was where the idea of a 4-year college came up somewhere. And is there a way to sort of connect 4-year college, research done at a 4-year college, startup businesses, incubator, that whole kind of thing? I think that would be something great to add in there.
I'd also like to add what I've failed to remember is support for the music scene. Hyannis doesn't have a lot now. Well, we used to have the Black Spot. I'm not sure if it's in Mashpee or Barnstable. It's right on the town line, but Sons of Italy. There used to be a lot of local show spots, and I have some friends that are doing great things at Flashback, but somebody approached me about the Armory possibly being a place to support the local music scene. So whatever the town could do that would be rad.
Used to be the Panama Club on Main Street. Okay, any other comments? Avery.
I just wanted to say, after sitting through many of the community meetings last month, the community had a lot to say about this planning process and what we're doing and how it's being handled. And I wanted to say that every time I come to one of these meetings, I'm kind of blown away. I mean, tonight we heard amazing public comment by Megan and Asia about who the people are on this committee, namely themselves. I sit in these workshops and I listen to all of us talk, and everybody is really working hard and really forward thinking and working hard to do the best we know how. And it's good. It's not It's not simple thinking. And finally, I want to thank the planning department. I mean, you guys are amazing. The leadership you provide, the work you do. And this is a big effort. And I just want all of us to kind of pat each other on the back and acknowledge how hard we work to do something that half the time I'm not totally sure what we're doing. So.
Thank you.
Great comments. Thank you. If it was real easy, it'd all be done by now, right? So thanks for all of you for showing up. And I want to get to the next topic on the agenda, which is general correspondence. Is there any correspondence for us? Oh, thank you. And talk about showing up at the next meeting, which is May 30th in this room. We anticipate that Cape Cod Chamber CEO Paul Nedzwicki will be here. I will not. Lindsay said he will be here to run the meeting, and sorry to miss it, but just won't be here. So after that, are there any other issues that we didn't anticipate that we want to talk about?
We never talked about if we were going to do 2 meetings in the summer or one.
Yes. So, yes, we are going to have 1 meeting in July, 1 meeting in August. We were going to have 2 meetings in June. It appears now that the town council is trumping the calendar, and we may have either a meeting, the first half of June will either be an in-person meeting on a Monday, or we may have a recorded session on the normal date that we then consume virtually, as everyone else in the community could, and then we can discuss that as a follow-up. So it looks like we might not be in person in June, except for once. And then September, I think we're back out on the road again. Does that sound about right?
Back out on the road? Does
On
that
the
mean
road.
community meetings?
On the road again? Yes. Yeah, good point, Asia. So we have to capitulate to the town council's meetings. Then they've kind of got Thursdays locked up, and they've got a lot going on, so they've probably bumped us. However, after September, it is my hope that we can two a month. 'Cause a month's a long time. You sort of forget your good ideas in between. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I think we're done.
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Anyone just want to stay here all night and eat chips? Thank you. Thank you, everyone.